Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, just a few weeks ago, Theresa May stood up in the House of Commons and rejected the EU's plans for the Irish border. She said no UK Prime Minister could ever agree to a plan to create a common regulatory area between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland as a fallback if nothing else is decided. But this week she did just that, or at least that so-called backstop option would be included in the transition agreement with Brussels. So does that mean Northern Ireland will remain fully aligned with the EU or the rest of the UK, or is there another way out for the government? Joining me are Brendan O'Duffy from Queen Mary's College in London, Jonathan Moore, historian of Irish politics, and the former Northern Ireland and Leave supporter Theresa Villiers. Welcome to you both. What do you reckon? I mean, looking at what's been accepted you know, in green writing, if you like, about all of this, is that a good enough compromise that there's an assurance for the Irish government and the rest of the EU?
I think it's a holding arrangement, predominantly geared towards maintaining, healing the rift within the Tory party over Brexit. It pushes the border issue down the road. It suggests that there is either a technical solution or the backstop maintains customs union in the single market. And I think those two positions are very hard to square. So I think there will be a reckoning to come. And I think, on balance, I think the direction of travel in the wider Brexit arrangements suggests that Northern Ireland will be treated in some way exceptionally. And that's going to be contrary to the current dominant unionist interests.
I mean, if it's unacceptable, why is it still there to have this idea of Northern Ireland having a different arrangement to the rest of the UK?
Well, the government obviously left it in there in order to move to get agreement on the transitional period.
But they're very clear that it could happen, though, couldn't it?
But, you know, well, they're very clear that it's only a backstop, and they're confident that one of the other two options will be possible. And the proposals they have set out for a technological way to deal with the Irish border and keep it as free-flowing, more or less, as it is today, they are credible, they would work. And
when is the deadline for this to, as it were, be eliminated as far as you're concerned? I mean, if it was still in there when we came to the meaningful vote, would you vote against the deal?
We certainly have to have a detailed position on the border by the time Parliament is assessing the final overall deal with the European Union. But I think that's what the government intends. And you know, it's in the interest of all sides that this is resolved in a way which keeps the border open. So that gives me confidence that it's going to be deliverable.
I mean, Jonathan Moore, if Northern Ireland has a different arrangement from the rest of the UK, is that, as it were, a victory for nationalism?
I think the problem that the Prime Minister has had on this is that she said no to the suggestions. And many people think that there isn't really that much of an alternative. Theresa says about using the technology, which is certainly something that will be looked at, but we haven't made much progress there. And so the views put forward by Dublin and, in fact, many people in Brussels that Northern Ireland should be treated differently because we don't want a hard border for all the reasons that have been discussed ad nauseum. That is winning the argument at the moment. And for the Unionists, this is very, very worrying. Above all, what they don't want is Northern Ireland to be treated differently to the rest of the United Kingdom. And remember, and here's the elephant in the room, if you like, this government is dependent on democratic unionist votes in the House of Commons. They are greatly dissatisfied that this is even on the table.
But you see, I'm a little bit puzzled by this because I think there's been a study by Queen's University in Belfast which actually shows that public opinion in Northern Ireland is not so opposed to the idea of an east-west border if it means that life can go on as it's established.
I mean, I think the DUP has at least two big factions, and I think one of those factions, the one that reflects the more prosperous farmers who do considerable trade and are closer to the border, are open to the idea of some sort of exceptional arrangement. We have to also consider the fact that the technical solutions, first of all, nothing solid has been proposed in 2 years of negotiations. The Norway agreement, which is in the single market, and still has a technical border, and it would be considered hard by most accounts. The Carlson proposal by the tariff. The World Trade Organization expert also proposes hard technical borders. So I think, yeah, politically, I think the deal is doable. I think, and also have to remember that the DUP, they do have the control, or they're supporting the government, but it's a nuclear option. If they pull down the government, there's an equal chance that they're going to be facing a Corbyn government the next time around as any other arrangement involving the Tories. So it's in some ways, it's a bluff that could be called if it comes down to the DUP's opposition to flexible arrangements.
I mean, do you think sorting this out has been harmed by the pact with the DUP?
No, I don't believe that's made a difference. In any event, whether we had, whatever government, was in power in Westminster, would still, I believe, be focused on maintaining the integrity of the UK's internal market. No government, I don't believe, could accept the idea of a border in the Irish Sea. So the government's position on this is not driven by the DUP. It would be exactly
with us.
Sorry, I didn't
Even if the people in Northern Ireland said we're not that bothered about that.
We are committed to the Union of the United Kingdom, and therefore a border down the Irish Sea is not something that would be acceptable. And it would be damaging to Northern Ireland as well if in some way it was cut off from its major market, which is Great Britain.
What do you think of Jacob Rees-Mogg's suggestion that Ireland should come out of the customs union and the single market so that we could all be one big happy group of islands?
Well, as I'm sure you'll be aware, the Irish will make their own decisions on these matters.
No, what do you think? I mean, do you think that's even a runner? Do you think it was helpful to say that?
I don't think there's not the remotest chance that Ireland will choose to do that. I'm afraid you'll have to ask him that. But
what did you think of that?
It's a preposterous throwback reflecting his late Victorian political ideas, because it is exactly the kind of solution that led to imposition through duplicity in negotiation to things like the Anglo-Irish Treaty and also the Act of Union in 1800. I mean, it's completely politically absurd.
Yeah, if I remember my history, Ireland only joined the European Union because the UK was joining the European Union. So if we're coming out, maybe Ireland should follow.
Well, absolutely. And in fact, when the UK was turned down in the early 1960s, Ireland removed its application to join. I mean, the two economies are very, very linked. But there is absolutely no way that the Republic of Ireland is thinking about this. There is more pro-European feeling amongst the electorate in the Republic than in any other comparable European state. The growth of anti-European populism has not happened except with a very small group of people. So no, it's not on the agenda, and I think Jacob Rees-Mogg was just being a little bit mischievous.
Okay, well, it sounds like we haven't cracked this one yet. Thank you all very much indeed.
Being an ex-Prime Minister, Finland's Alexander Stubb told me is the best job in the world. He gives few interviews at home because every intervention, he says, seems like criticism of the current administration. He calls himself an Anglophile, indeed his wife is British, and has always forged a strong alliance between Finland and Britain within the EU. Ahead of the European summit tomorrow, I sat down with him this afternoon to talk about Brexit, loyalty and whether it was right for the EU Commission President to congratulate President Putin. I began by asking Mr Stubb whether he agreed with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who told me on Monday that as far as the withdrawal treaty went, the government had rolled over without even getting its tummy tickled.
I disagree. I actually think that the negotiations are going quite well for both sides. Usually in the EU you have three phases: crisis, chaos and suboptimal solution. We had the crisis when Brexit basically happened, the vote took place, but I think the negotiations have been very smooth. And I think there are two reasons for it. One is called Michel Barnier and the other one is called David Davis. So I'm quite optimistic.
You don't see a problem with the Irish border?
Well, I see a problem with Brexit. And Irish border is a symptom of it. But if you look at the whole package, they have a financial settlement, which was the 7th of December, so everyone knows what the bill is going to be like. They have a transition deal. Everyone knows for how long the UK will be in after it's out.
I'm going to bring you back to the border.
On the Irish border, that is basically the symbol of the problem. Because if you're not part of a customs union, if you're not part of the single market, someone has to try to square the circle. And the way in which they've done it in negotiations so far is to say that there are three options. One, put it as a part of a big deal. Two, do some technological stuff. And three, have a backstop. And they still have to negotiate and work on that.
Can it be solved?
Oof, I don't know. You know, I've been in EU negotiations for the better part of 20 years. Everything is solvable. You always find a solution at the end of the day. Whether it's going to be a solution that the EU likes or the UK likes, I don't know. But I think it's very, very important to protect the integrity of the single market and make sure that there's no hard border.
Is there any solution that is obvious to you?
Well, the obvious solution is to start thinking along the lines of, customs union or some form of a customs union. The obvious thinking is to start using modern technology, and that will be the final deal. But
they've said that can take a decade, right?
Well, it can take a long time, but I don't know how long. And to a certain extent, you could also say that, the negotiations on Ireland are the pretext also for the future relationship of the UK. And I personally think, as an Anglophile married to a Brit and with children with dual nationality, that it's very important that the UK has a special place in or out from the European Union in the future.
Would you see financial services being included in a trade deal? Philip Hammond has spoken of the dangers of fragmenting the market in the City of London. He said it doesn't go to Europe. If you try and punish Britain, it just goes to Hong Kong or Singapore. So isn't it important that financial services is part of that?
I think Philip Hammond has been one of the voices of reason in this whole debate. I look at financial services as obviously part of one of the four freedoms, if you will, the free movement of money to a certain extent. And I agree that financial services in Europe should not be fragmented. But having said that, and as a banker nowadays, I also fully understand that if you don't have passporting rights, there is going to be movement of financial services elsewhere. Financial services is not going to escape London, but they will be more centralized on the continent proper.
You've called yourself an Anglophile personally. Yeah. There has probably been no closer friend to Britain within the EU than Finland to the UK. Do you feel now that those loyalties are torn? Is it more important to you to see the UK flourish or to see the EU flourish without us?
Well, obviously, first and foremost, I'm a Finn. Secondly, I'm a European. And thirdly, I'm married to a Brit and an Anglophile.
So the wife comes third?
No, wife comes number one because she's also a Finnish national nowadays. No, but the bottom line is that obviously, for me, Brexit is sad. And I still, I say this with a sunken heart that it's a lose-lose proposition. But at the same time, I'm a pragmatic Finn, so we have to make the best of it. So I belong to the camp who is trying to help the UK to alleviate the pain, at the same time get a good deal for the European Union. And then whatever happens in domestic politics in the UK, that's something that is completely out of our or my reach.
I want to turn to the words of Jean-Claude Juncker today. He congratulated Putin on his win. Broke with the protocol of a lot of Western leaders. Was it a mistake?
Well, it's not my job as former Prime Minister or Vice President of the European Investment Bank to give advice to Jean-Claude Juncker. Every institution and actually every state takes that decision, and I do understand the sensitivities on a lot of players in this game.
Would you have said that if you had been in his role?
Well, it's a hypothetical question, isn't it?
Because
I'm not. I'm trying to be diplomatic and discreet here.
He congratulated President Putin. He said, congratulations on your re-election, President Putin.
I think there are a lot of European leaders and others as well who have congratulated, and it is part of protocol. There's no denying that. Obviously, was it my choice? And remember that Finland has 1,300 kilometers of border with Russia. I would like to see a more open, more international, more transparent Russia than what we have today.
When you add those together, we have seen incursions, we've seen cyber incursions, we've seen electoral meddling. Do you worry about the country on your doorstep?
Of course I worry. And I think that nowadays actually the line between war and peace is blurred. We see cyber attacks, we see usage of chemical weapons or nerve gases, we see media manipulation. Yeah, we're seeing different types of things happening all over the place. And I think we have to sort of put a foot down and start discussing these things and try to make them unavoidable in the future.
Alexander Stubb, thank you.
Thanks.